After the break, Daenerys and William make it back to the uh, genealogical hall of records past the one library with the Targaryen flag at the end of the staircase. As he takes his seat, she then introduces him to the several generations that follow Aegon III, who is also later followed by two sons in short reign, and Viserys II. In this one, William, you're going to learn about the children that were born. Then some of them come from Aegon III, while others come from Viserys II. Two of the sons of Aegon III had a short reign, and thus Viserys II, Aegon III's brother and Hand of the King, then succeeded to the Iron Throne of Swords for the realm of the kingdom, who then also had a son that followed in his stead for the realm of the kingdom. Alright, so this is going to be quite the expansion of the House of Targaryen. Yes, many children were born. Unfortunately, again, as it would be considered a black mark against the House of Targaryen, there were a few bastards born. But you'll learn about this soon. Are you ready to continue? Yes, Daenerys, I'm ready to continue my studies. Very well then, let us begin. So with that, the continuation of the House of Targaryen's genealogical records of Daenerys Stormborn of the House of Targaryen's genealogy continues. As palace historian, it is now the time to make some additional notes here. While it has been noted that most Valarian steel swords have been accounted for, there are some that have not been recognized or accounted for. As we all know, Blackfire is the very first sword carried by King Aegon I, the Conqueror, and had been passed on through many reigning kings, while some were honest and others ruthless. Even Dark Sister had been accounted for because of Visenya, the second sister wife to King Aegon I, the Conqueror, and as it had passed hands through those who were of much integrity and honesty and those who were ruthless. However, then we also know that there was one called Vigilance, and Daeron the Daring, the young brother to Aegon II Targaryen during the civil war known as Dance of the Dragons, had been lost. In theory, it could look like this, but no one's certain because it had been lost when he was somehow mysteriously killed when he was the next in line to the throne of swords for the realm of the kingdoms. Now comes another one, though it cannot be for certain that it had this particular design. One could only imagine that at the time when Viserys II was at the time of the House of Ropaire, that this sword, Truth, had once existed. And again, it is uncertain as to where its whereabouts are, but perhaps as we continue on, we might learn of where it had ended up. Or, like the last one, Vigilance, became a myth of a legend and is also lost. In any case, 4 Valarian steel swords have now been accounted for in the House of Targaryen's genealogical history and records. Now we're going to also look at the eggs. As we all know, Viserys II, at the time before the ship that he had been on was captured, he had to hide his egg. You never hear anything more about what happened with this egg. And so the question is, what became of it? It doesn't take very long, nor does it stay there forever. Eventually, all things do hatch in time. As we all know, at the time of Daenerys Stormborn of the House of Targaryen, she was born of fire, and so were her dragons, because fire only quickens the hatching of the egg. But the ship was not on fire, so in time, the egg would eventually hatch. And then, of course, as we all know, Aegon II, his youngest son, Malar, had an egg. But before we get to him, remember Daena Targaryen, who had wed Jacaerys Valarian, Queen Rhaenyra's first eldest son. It was once said that she would got an egg and then received two more. Of course, the first egg became that known as Morning, and of course, Morning she rode for a little while, but it did not live long. What became of the other two eggs? Again, another mystery. Nothing is certain, and eggs just do not simply last forever. Again, Daenerys Stormborn of the House of Targaryen's eggs either could have came from Sheep Stealer, who may have mated with Cannibal, who most likely was a female dragon, or Grey Smoke, because they all seem to disappear along with the last dragon rider known as Nettles. Then again, these eggs could have hatched as well. Long forgotten, set aside, no one knows. In any case, again, eggs do not just sit around forever. Again, back to Malar. He was the youngest son and heir of Aegon II Targaryen during the civil war known as Dance of the Dragons. When Mom had separated him from one who was charged to take care of him, they literally ripped him to pieces. Imagine the blood, guts, and gore flying all over the place, not in traffic. So his egg could have easily fallen to the ground, maybe slightly cracked, but unlike that of which is laid by a chicken, it does not just merely crack itself contents of the egg. Because again, a dragon egg can withstand fire until the time it hatches, then it would have to be pretty good and solid and strong to even hit the ground and not just simply break open. So again, what happened to his egg? Did it ever hatch? No one seems to know. However, though it cannot be proven, as we all know, there are many myths and legends. Some people might think they have gone mad because they think they just see things, or they've been wandering the deserts of Essos too long, or been out in the winter tundra and out in the northern area of the wall too long and see things that aren't really there. But can one be for certain? Perhaps these eggs did hatch. In which case, then, maybe Daenerys Stormborn of the House of Targaryen's eggs came from one of these dragons. This is just a theory that may or may not be able to be proven. But even the blue one, which belonged to Prince Malar, eventually, generations from now, maybe several generations, may come up with a name that will not surface yet. However, it has been rumored that one such dragon carried the name Leviathan. Now, how absurd would that be for a dragon to fly and swim? Well, nothing more will be said. This is just more or less a pictorial note of what could have happened. But nobody has ever lived long enough to tell if these dragons are still in existence or were at the time. So these are merely myths, legends of what could have become of the eggs, never mentioned again. Once again, we're going to do a brief touch-up since we've already covered this area anyway, because it's along the same timeline. As we remember, Rhaena Targaryen, daughter of Prince Daemon Targaryen, who is the uncle and second husband to Rhaenyra Targaryen, and she's also the daughter to Prince Daemon's first wife, Valarian, had a sister named Daena Targaryen. And she had, for her third husband, married a third knight by the name of Garmin Hightower, of the House Hightower. Now, after she introduced Daenerys Valarian, consort to Aegon III, they theoretically, though not proven, had a double wedding. Again, between her and this knight, they had 6 children, but the names were never recorded. Along with the sister, Daena Targaryen, who also is the daughter to Prince Daemon Targaryen, and Laena Valarian, Prince Daemon's second wife, and Prince Daemon being the second husband and uncle to Rhaenyra Targaryen, whose sister is Rhaena Targaryen. After Lucerys, her husband, had been killed, nothing said as to whether she had remarried again or had children. Once 6 children are born, or even during the time of 6 children, nothing is ever heard of again from Rhaena Targaryen or her sister Daena Targaryen, or the knight that Rhaena had married and the children from that time period on. And thus would end the timeline for her lineage for this part of the historical records of the House of Targaryen. The only thing that it can be confirmed is the fact that she did have one dragon egg, and when it hatched, it became the young dragon known as Morning, which she did get to ride for a while, but unfortunately, it was also the last dragon, and it didn't live long. So that is the entire final line, by records and all accounts, of Rhaena Targaryen and her sister Daena Targaryen, the knight Garmin Hightower of House Hightower, and the 6 children that they had together. Okay, so this is going to be the first son who, even though it was a short time, followed in the stead as heir to Aegon III Targaryen. And let's see if we can get this. Okay, there we go. Daenerys First Targaryen. Daenerys First Targaryen, known as the Young Dragon, was the eldest son of Aegon III and the 8th Targaryen king to sit on the Iron Throne from 157 to 161 AC. He ascended to the throne at the age of 14 and is famous for conquering Dorne, which he wrote about in his Conquest of Dorne. Character and appearance. Daeron was a warrior and conqueror, self-confident, and very charismatic. He was young and very handsome, being clean-shaven with long hair, wore the crown of Aegon the Conqueror. He was noted to be very brave on the battlefield, where he wore an elaborate suit of gold and black plate. Daeron, for his biography, was the firstborn son of Hera Aegon III and Daenera of House Valarian, and was born in 143 AC. He had a younger brother, Valar, and three young sisters, Daena, Rhaena, and Elena. His father passed away when Daeron was only 14, and he was crowned King Daeron I, though at times he would be called the Boy King. Daeron kept his uncle Viserys as his Hand of the King, as his uncle had held the position for Aegon III as well. Daeron had long felt that the continued independence of Dorne represented unfinished business for the Targaryens, and upon his ascension he vowed to rectify his ancestors' mistake. His uncle and Hand of the King, Prince Viserys, and counselors objected to his plans. His counselors reminded him that Aegon the Conqueror and his sisters failed twice in trying to conquer Dorne, and they had dragons, and that the Iron Throne had none, to which Daeron famously replied, "You have a dragon. He stands before you." In the end, Daeron could not be gainsaid. With the help and advice of Alan Valarian, he set about planning the invasion. The campaign showed great promise as Daeron went over and revised the mistakes that were made in the First Dornish War. Daeron split his army into three for the invasion and personally led the army down the Bone Way. He learned from the mistakes Boris Baratheon made in the First War. Daeron used the Goat Paths located in the pass to avoid the traps and ambushes the Dornish usually implemented to repel invaders. His other army, led by House Tyrell, attacked at the same time down Princess Pass. The Third Army was a naval assault along the Dornish coast, was commanded by Alan Valarian, who won sweeping victories in Plankytown. By 158 AC, a year after the invasion began, the Prince of Dorne and 20 Dornish lords had bent the knee. The conquest of Dorne, as it became known, looked like it succeeded, and Daeron becoming the first Targaryen king to conquer Dorne and unite all 7 kingdoms for the first time. Despite the loss of 10,000 men in taking Dorne, an assassination attempt on Daeron was prevented by the actions of Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight, who threw himself in the path of the poisoned arrow meant for his king. Aemon survived the poison, though, and was sent back to King's Landing to fully recover. Following his conquest after the submission of Sunspear, he wrote the book Conquest of Dorne about his achievement. The book was known for its style and simplicity, but in it Daeron exaggerated the numbers of his foes to make his conquest seem greater. Unfortunately for him, Daeron's conquest did not last. It was undone in a fortnight when a clever trap killed the steward that Daeron had left to rule Dorne, Lord Lionel Tyrell. His death sparked a great uprising that overthrew most of the conquest. Daeron lost 50,000 men trying to hold Dorne, culminating in his own death during the uprising. At that time, he was only 18. Daeron was murdered while meeting the Dornish under a peace banner, with 3 knights of the King's Guard slain, 1 yielding, and Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight captured, though Prince Aemon managed to slay 2 of the betrayers before being taken into custody. Daeron may have died in the Prince's Pass, as Lord Alistair and Sir Olyvar Oakhart were killed there at the site of the young dragon. Daeron was succeeded by his brother, Valar the Blessed, who brought about a rapprochement with the Dornish. The Weeping Town received its name from the townspeople's reaction when Daeron's corpse arrived from Dorne. In the city of Old Town, there is a statue of King Daeron I astride a tall stone horse, his sword lifted toward Dorne. Quotes by Daeron I. Jon then states, Daeron Targaryen was only 14 when he conquered Dorne. Benjen reprised, a conquest that lasted a summer. Your boy king lost 10,000 men taking the place and another 50 trying to hold it. Someone should have told him that war isn't a game. By Jon Snow and Benjen Stark. His full name was Daeron Targaryen, the first of his name. Other aliases was the Young Dragon, the Boy King. Other titles included King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, and Protector of the Realm. He was buried at King's Landing. He comes from the royal house of Targaryen. His predecessor was Aegon III Targaryen. The heir was Baelor I Targaryen, and also was the successor, Baelor I Targaryen. Unfortunately, there were no issues. His father, Aegon III Targaryen, and his mother, Daena Valarian. Daena Targaryen, daughter of Aegon III. Princess Daena Targaryen was the second daughter of King Aegon III Targaryen and his second wife, Queen Daenerys Valarian. Character and appearance. At 14, 2 years younger than Daena, Daena was just as lovely as her sister, but hers was a softer, sweeter, more feminine beauty. Though by no means plump, her body was more rounded than Daena's. Her breasts were larger, her lips fuller, her hair more gold than silver, and always carefully coiffed and combed. She had soft, kind eyes and a shy, sweet smile. Personality-wise, she differed quite a lot from her older sister, where Daena was willful, wild, and adventurous. Daena was dutiful, meek, and passive. She loved lace and gold trim, and often embroidered depictions of faith on her clothing. In history, she was born in 147 AC. Daena was the second daughter of King Aegon III Targaryen and Queen Daenerys Valarian. She had 2 older brothers, Daeron and Baelor, and 2 sisters, Daena, who was older, and Olenna, who was younger. During the reign of their older brother, Baelor, Daena and her sisters were confined in what has since been known as the Maidenfall. According to Baelor, this was so the sight of them would not tempt him or others in his court to mortal lusts. Daena, unlike her 2 sisters, never chafed at her confinement. She was almost as pious as Baelor, and she eventually became a septa. After the death of Baelor, Daena was briefly considered as a possible heir to the throne. The memories of the Dance of the Dragons and of Rhaenyra Targaryen, the last women to sit the Iron Throne, left many leery of the idea of a ruling queen. Rhaena's uncle was crowned Viserys II, and the claims of Rhaena and her sisters were set aside.
Water, cleansing, powerful, healing, changing. I am born of water, cleansing, powerful, healing, changing. I am born of water, cleansing, powerful, healing, changing. I am born of water.
This is regarding one that could have been very well a sister, Hera Targaryen. As covered before, Hera can be spelled as Haera, or sometimes just Hara. The interesting mystery is, who was she? She had bright golden hair, much like the Targaryen, and the glowing eyes. But for some reason, she was not recorded in history. Perhaps she was like Daena, the very defiant. Her defiance allowed her to escape being put into the Red Keep, known as the Maiden's Vault. She was a little more craftier, I guess we could say. She was also a lot like, in theory, because again, there's no actual history of her having any children, any marriages. She's just a name on the very first genealogical chart. So she was a lot like Balon the First, kind of a religious person. And when she voluntarily went to Faith in the Seven, as again, in theory, she felt things were a little too hard regarding certain disciplinary actions, how they treated others, making things that should not be shameful, most shameful. As she continued her studies in the Faith of the Seven, she finally came to a conclusion. This was not for her. So again, all this being conjecture and in theory, it would be then wise to say that she most likely left with the knowledge that she had of the Faith of the Seven, though she did not condone same-sex relations, because to her this also would be considered an abomination and not natural of the mating order. She struck out on her own and was going to teach a new religion called the Faith of the Gods of Fire and Ice. This eventually would lead to the belief of no shame in the world, that one should be proud of who they are, that nudity was not a shame. She would also endorse the fact that while a past king, Aegon I Targaryen, had used multiple marriages in an evil way, that having multiple wives was not sinful if the man could prove he could take care of them. So this became part of the new religion of the Targaryen and Valarian religious faction called the Gods of Fire and Ice. This religion, of course, would be only for those who would be converted away from the Faith of Seven or into the Faith, but not unlike the Faith of the Seven would not be a conversion by force, one would have to simply choose. Moreover, that there would be a certain baptismal practice, one by submersion and one by drinking that of the ancient Valarian blue waters. And she would be on a quest to find these waters, as they are kind of rare. Unfortunately, this also set the precedence for Targaryens who believed and started following her religious faction of the gods of fire and ice to be terrorized and victimized by the faith of the Seven and hunted down like dogs. So this then becomes the mystery. Who was Hera Targaryen?
Witches back from the dead. We are the flow, we are the air, we are the healers, we are the wet. We are the flow, we are the air, we are the witches back from the dead. We are the flow, we are the air, we are the healers, we are the wet. We are the flow, we are the air, we are the witches back from the dead.
Daena Targaryen, daughter of King Aegon III Targaryen. Princess Daena Targaryen was the third daughter and youngest child of King Aegon III Targaryen and his wife, Queen Daenerys Valarian. Appearance and character. According to semi-canon sources, Daena was initially not a great beauty like her sisters, and at age 11 was even described as a skinny little thing, awkward and angular, shy and charming by turns. However, her beauty matured as she got older, and men said that she was more beautiful at age 70 than at age 17. Her eyes were a soft lilac, her mouth thin-lipped and often angry. Her hair was a platinum white with a bright golden streak down the middle, an unusual color even for the Targaryens. She wore it long, pulled back, and braided, and was always being told it was her crowning beauty. However, she cut off her braid to defy her brother Baelor for imprisoning her in the maiden vault, and afterwards wore her hair short for years. As a child, Daena liked to dress in black, simply because her older sister, Daena, also dressed in black. In character, she had more than a little of Daena's willfulness, as she would prove when she grew older. Daena was also shrewd and intelligent, especially with money. In history, she was born in 150 AC. Daena was the third daughter and youngest child of King Aegon III, and Queen Daena of House Valarian. She had two older brothers, Darren and Baelor, and two older sisters, Daena and Rhaena. Elena's most cherished possession was a dragon's egg, whose stony shell showed the same colors as her hair. The Maiden Ball. Elena's brother, Baelor I Targaryen, came to the throne in 161 AC, when she was 11. Shortly thereafter, Baelor the Blessed imprisoned Elena and her sisters in their own Court of Beauty, in the part of the Red Keep that would become known as the Maiden Hall, to preserve their innocence, and so the sight of them would not tempt him or others in his court to mortal lusts. The three sisters were known afterwards as the Three Maids in the Tower. Elena had always been told that her hair was her crowning glory. She hated her imprisonment, so she cut off her braid and sent it to Baelor, hoping that if she rid herself of her beauty, he would allow her out of the Maiden Ball. Her pleas fell on deaf ears, and she remained in the Maiden Ball until Baelor's death in 171 AC. There were some amongst the small folk and the lords who felt that Elena's eldest sister, Daena, should inherit the throne, as she was Aegon III's eldest surviving child. However, Daena had been isolated for a decade in the Maiden Ball, which had left her and her sisters without powerful allies. The memories of the Dance of the Dragons and of Rhaena Targaryen, the last woman to sit the Iron Throne, left many leery of the idea of a ruling queen. The precedents of the Great Council of 101 AC and the dance were cited. The claims of Daena and her sisters were set aside, and Elena's uncle was crowned King Viserys II. Later in life, Elena outlived her siblings and led a tumultuous life once freed from the Maiden Ball. Although Elena had three husbands during her lifetime, the great love of her life was her cousin, Lord Alan Valarian. She gave birth to two bastard children by him, the twins John and Jane Waters. Elena had hoped to marry Alan, but he was lost at sea. A year after his disappearance, she gave up hope and agreed to marry another. And so at this point in time of the timeline, we will continue as time progresses. Valar I Targaryen, second son of Aegon III Targaryen. Valar I Targaryen, known as the Beloved and the Blessed, was the ninth Targaryen king to reign on the Iron Throne as Lord of the Seven Kingdoms. Known for his piety, Valar was a septon as well as a king. He was the second son of King Aegon III Targaryen and Queen Daena Valarian, and ruled after the death of his older brother, King Daeron I Targaryen. None of the Targaryen kings are as beloved as Valar. He loved the small folk and the gods in equal parts, yet imprisoned his own sisters. Some remember him as a great and holy man and praise him for his contributions to the faith of the Seven, for forging a peace with Dorne, his mercy, and his many acts of charity. Others are less impressed by him, believing him to be an overly zealous, weak fool. The great Sept of Baelor in King's Landing features a statue of him. Appearance and character. Baelor was a peaceful, devoted, and pious man. He was very thin due to his repeated fasts and frail looking. He had a gentle, almost beatific smile and a reedy voice. He wore a long beard and hair of typical Targaryen silver gold color. His crown was made of flowers and vines. Not a martial man, Baelor's favorite weapon was a prayer. In history, for his early life, Baelor married his younger sister, Princess Daena Targaryen, in 160 AC. He refused to consummate their marriage, however, causing his sister, who usually dressed all in black, to change her clothes to only whites in an attempt to shame him, as she had sworn to wear nothing else until there was they were properly bedded. The plan did not work, as Baelor liked to see his sister all in white, feeling it made her look more innocent. Baelor and Dorne. Upon the death of his brother, King Daeron I Targaryen, in Dorne, Baelor was crowned king and ascended the Iron Throne when he was 17. His uncle, Prince Viserys Targaryen, acting as hand of the king, had sent 14 Dornish hostages to the dungeons to await execution. Baelor's first act was to pardon the hostages and publicly forgive his brother's killers, despite outcry from his lords and council. Many similar acts of piety and forgiveness occurred throughout his 10-year reign. Baelor desired to bind up the wounds of his brother's war and personally return the hostages to Dorne. The king walked the own way, barefoot and clad in sackcloth, while the hostages rode horses. His journey took him to the location where House Weil had imprisoned Prince Aemon Targaryen of the King's Guard. Baelor pleaded to Lord Weil to free the naked and caged Aemon, but was refused. Offering a prayer instead, Baelor continued his journey, swearing he would return. Baelor arrived at Sunspear after an arduous journey, which was considered the first miracle of his reign. Baelor forged a peace with the Prince of Dorne, which was considered the second miracle. Part of the agreement was that Baelor's young cousin, Prince Daeron, the only grandson of his uncle and hand, Prince Viserys, would marry the eldest daughter of the Prince of Dorne, Princess Maria Martell, when both children were of age. Baelor refused the prince's offer of a galley back to King's Landing. The prince made efforts to ensure that Baelor would be met with hospitality on his way back on foot. Special attention was paid to Lord Weil, as Baelor had requested the Prince of Dorne to command Aemon's release. Yet when Baelor returned at Aemon's location, Aemon's imprisonment had gotten worse. Lord Weil granted Baelor a key to Aemon's cage, which was now suspended over a pit of vipers. Aemon begged Baelor to leave and seek aid, but Baelor felt the gods would protect him. While singers like to say the vipers bowed their heads to Baelor as he passed, not daring to strike because he was pure and holy, Baelor was bitten, though sources differ on how often, ranging from half a dozen to half 100. Aemon pulled Baelor from the pit into the cage and climbed to safety with the king upon his back. Aemon carried the unconscious king along the boneway until he reached the safety of First House Dondarrion at Blackhaven, and then House Baratheon at Storm's End. Baelor in King's Landing. Upon his return to King's Landing, Baelor convinced the High Septon to dissolve his marriage to his sister Daena, since it had been contracted before he had become a king and was never consummated. Baelor then placed his sisters, Daena, Rhaena, and Elena, in their Court of Beauty in the Red Keep, later called the Maiden Ball. Baelor wanted to preserve the innocence of his sisters from the wickedness of the world and from the lusts of men, and prevent them from tempting the men at court with carnal thoughts. Okay, that works. Guess they didn't write this too well on this parchment paper. Sorry about that. There were people who wondered whether or not Baelor feared the beauty of his sisters on his own behalf. Many protested this idea, including the Han Viserys, the princesses themselves, and other members at court, but Baelor would not relent. The three were kept in comfortable confinement, and lords and knights send maidens to the Maiden Vault to gain favor with Baelor. Baelor next decreed prostitution to be outlawed in King's Landing, putting more than 1,000 whores and their children out of the city. This was heavily protested, but Baelor refused to listen and closed his eyes to the unrest that followed. He busied himself with building a new sept on Visenya's hill, which he had seen in a vision. The construction of this great sept would not be completed until years after Baelor's death. The small folk loved Baelor, as the king emptied the treasure regularly for his charitable acts. Baelor's erratic decisions made his lords uneasy, wondering if the snake venom had affected his mind. Being a septon prevented Baelor from having children, and the High Septon gained increasing influence over the spirituality-inclined king. Baelor earned the contempt of his nobles by forcing the proud Lord Belgrave to wash the feet of a leper. He tried to replace messenger ravens with doves, as described in Maester Walgrave's Black Wings, Swift Words. He granted tax exemption to lords who protected their daughters' virtue through chastity vows, and attempted to birth new dragons by praying over his dragon egg for half a year, yet his prayers went unanswered. He donated a loaf of bread to each man and woman in the city for a year. He also had many books burned, including all copies of The Testimony of Mushroom by Mushroom, and Dragons, Worms, Wyverns, Their Unnatural History by Septon Barth, because he claimed Barth was more a sorcerer than a septon. The contents of the book haven't been enough to win Baelor's enmity. Towards the end of his reign, Baelor would fast to the point of fainting to tame the lusts that shamed him. When the High Septon died, Baelor chose a simple stonemason called Pate as the replacement, as the gods had told him. Pate carved stonework so beautifully that Baelor believed him to be the smith in human form. The new High Septon could not read, write, or recite any prayers, was described as a lackwit, and died of a fever the next year after taking office. Rumors spread that Viserys had him imprisoned to end the embarrassment to the realm. Baelor then raised a street urchin of 8 years to the position, as Baelor claimed the boy worked miracles. Upon his death, when Baelor's cousin, Princess Nerys, gave birth to twins who both died shortly after their delivery in 161 AC, the king fasted for a moon's turn. When his sisters and former wife, Daena, gave birth to a bastard named Daemon Waters in 170 AC, Baelor fasted for 40 days and nights, refusing to take anything but water and some bread. On the 41st day of his fast in 171 AC, the king collapsed, and neither Grand Maester Munkin or the boy High Septon could save him. History says Baelor starved himself to death by the prolonged fasting to cleanse himself of lust, but some believe he was poisoned by his hand and uncle Viserys. Some claim Viserys did so to gain the throne, but others claim Viserys had done so for the good of the realm, as Baelor had come to believe that the Seven wanted him to convert all the non-believers in the entire realm. Had Baelor been able to put these beliefs into action, or was the old gods following north and the drowned gods worshipping Iron Islands would have resulted? Quotes about Baelor. The feeblest king who ever sat on the Iron Throne, by Sir Eustace Osprey. Lancel, talking to Jaime, marriage requires consummation. King Baelor was made to wed his sister Daena, but they never lived as man and wife, and he put her aside as soon as he was crowned. Jaime then responds, the realm would have been better served if he had closed his eyes and fucked her. I know enough of history to know that. From Jaime Lannister and Lancel Lannister. He was a rare spirit, pure and brave and innocent, untouched by the evils of the world. By Lancel Lannister to Jaime Lannister. His full name was Baelor Targaryen, the first of his name. The alias was Baelor the Beloved, Baelor the Blessed, Baelor the Befuddled. Other titles included King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, Protector of the Realm. He came from the royal house Targaryen. His predecessor was Daeron the First Targaryen, and his successor was Viserys the Second Targaryen, his uncle. Queen was Daena Targaryen, but unfortunately there were no issues. His father was Aegon III Targaryen, and his mother Daenerys Valarian. As William finished up the most of the siblings of children of Aegon III Targaryen. Daenerys decides then to interrupt him. It is getting late, William. Perhaps we should continue this another time. I guess you're right. I didn't realize time slipped by so fast. Well, you are doing very well, William. And I think we should go to the dining hall, get ourselves something to eat, and turn in for the evening. Tomorrow, after we wake up and have our breakfast, we will come back and continue where you left off. All right, then. Well, you know best, and I will do as you command. Thank you, William. She seems to have a smile and delight at how he is just so obedient and does whatever she tells him. So after passing the other library with the Targaryen flag at the base of the steps, they enter into the grand dining hall. Well, the dining hall, not the largest one. And William just happens to see Tyrion getting himself something to drink. Well, another long day. Yes, Tyrion, actually, learning quite the history of the House of Targaryen. So as William then sits down and Tyrion pours him a glass of wine, Tyrion then sits down, and so what have you learned so far? Well, I've learned about the children of Aegon III. I think there's one more that I have to learn about, Daena. And then I learn about where the proper order of, the way I thinks about it, Viserys II comes in, but he only gets to rule for a year, I guess, and then comes Aegon IV. Tyrion seems kind of surprised. Look on his face. Oh, yes. He was quite well known. And didn't you say the last one that you had studied a while back was kind of roly-poly? Yes. Why? Is there something I need to know? Oh, no. He will definitely outmatch the one you had learned about. He lost count, I guess, after 900 women that he loves so much. Daenerys kind of gives Tyrion a kind of a look like expecting him saying something. Tyrion just kind of looks back at her, doesn't say anything. Oh, excuse me. So he gets up. William then looks towards Daenerys. Well, I'm sure he didn't say anything wrong intentionally. Yes, well, sometimes he says too much. Besides, you'll learn about this soon enough, William. Forgive me, my queen. That will be all, Tyrion. So he bows and walks off. Besides, William, he isn't far from the truth. There is another shame that came to the House of Targaryen as she watches him Tyrion walking off, that, not too proud of. But you'll learn about this tomorrow. All right, well, I would imagine then, after we finish here in the dining hall, and then William starts rubbing her wound, she looks down with a smile. William, you're not supposed to do this at the table. Well, I have to love what special person happens to be growing within you. I thought maybe you might want to have me hold you, because you are getting, well, quite large with the blessing of life. She kind of looks up with a slight smile. You know how to speak words sweetly, William, and yes, I do appreciate this. It shows that you think of others before yourself. Not that I wouldn't mind loving you tonight, but I am growing with someone special within me. Well, good. Blessed are you of the women, especially a queen, who should have something special blossoming in you. When this one be born, be it boy or girl, if you like, I can bless you with more children. She doesn't seem to say anything, but kind of has this look on her face and shaking her head. Oh, right, that probably wasn't appropriate at the table. So she doesn't say anything. And so they finish in the dining hall, where she then gets up, leads William by the hand, and they turn in for the evening.